This discussion is going to be about a ticking clock, technological development and regulation. Before I introduce our two great panellists, I am going to be asking these gentlemen about regulation. We've heard a lot this morning about these great technologies, AI and emerging technologies. How do we think about, and I'll ask Florian particularly, how do we think about regulating that? But what about the private sector and the public sector? How should they be working together? And finally, because I'm an economist, I want to ask the gentlemen, are they optimists about the future or are they pessimists? But let me briefly introduce our two great panellists. First of all, His Excellency Florian Turski, who is the State Secretary for Digitalisation at the Government of the Republic of Austria. Welcome, Florian. And a very warm welcome to Mr. Masood M. Sharif Mahmood, Chief Executive Officer at ENUAE. Masood, very welcome to you as well.
Pleasure, thank you. Pleasure.
Florian, I'd love to start with you, if I can, from the public sector. We're all excited about these technologies, and we've heard some great panels already today about these technologies, but you're in a really interesting, privileged position. How are you starting to think about regulating these amazing emerging technologies? What's your general approach before we get a little bit more specific?
You know, there is a joke right now all over Europe. America is innovating, Asia is innovating, and Europe is regulating. But in fact, our aim is to come to a single digital market. And so we are doing right now all over Europe, all over the European Union, a lot of regulation to get to this aim of a single digital market. For example, the Digital Market Act, the Digital Service Act, or right now, the AI Act. And the AI Act is the first real legal framework about artificial intelligence. And that was quite a challenge. For example, how you define artificial intelligence in a legal framework at all. And our aim in that case is to come to a legal certainty for our enterprises. And I think that's a big thing. And not only for the hyperscalers. For hyperscalers, that will be quite easy because they will have a lot of lawyers. I know a lot of them are also here, and they will do a good work. But for our small and medium enterprises, and in Central Europe we have a lot of them, that's the biggest challenge. How they have legal certainty in field of AI, for example. And so in Austria we started, it's the first country of Europe, AI office, where we are dealing still right now with the AI Act, even it's not in place right now all over the European Union, to come to this legal certainty for our enterprises. And I think that's the biggest challenge of the next years.
Interesting, Florian. Thanks so much. I mean, before I bring Masood in, are there one or two areas you're really, really focused on? If you mentioned SMEs, they're in Austria. Are there one or two issues that people are really saying to you all in government, we need these areas sorted first, or do you have to get a bunch of things done at the same time?
I think the most important thing is to provide as a government the infrastructure. Not only the digital infrastructure, the mobile infrastructure, and also the fiber infrastructure. I think even more important is the data infrastructure. And so we're building right now different digital databases all over Europe. The digital health database, for example, where we are able to provide all European health data for our researchers, for also the private sector. I think that's our main focus. And we see that as also something only Europe will be able to provide, that good quality of data, for example, in the health sector, in the tourism sector, in the agriculture sector.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll definitely come back to you, Florian, in a moment. Masood, can I bring you in? From your position, how are you working to enable AI and bring, hopefully, the benefits of AI to yourselves and customers and clients in this region?
Thank you for the question. Very, very important question. I think from our end, if you think of our entity as an end user, or think of us as an enabler for the end user, the customers, the partners. We've been organizing ourselves over the past, I would say, couple of years into, I can put it into 4 streams, to be quite honestly, because you have to understand this is very nascent, very emergent in terms of the explosion of the potential of the use cases of AI. November 22, AI was heard all over the world with ChatGPT, but it has come much before that, and we've been busy for the past few years really preparing and using it. I think number one, enablement of the infrastructure. And when I say enablement of infrastructure, we're talking about both computation and ability to compute, as well as connectivity. And connectivity for us, fiber is extremely important. But on the compute side, this is extremely important, where today we're partnering with many providers of compute capabilities. Today, I mean, Jensen spoke this morning, if you talk about NVIDIA, they have 83% of the GPU market globally, but we're working today with multiple GPU providers as well as cloud services providers. The enablement of the compute capability is key for us. We're working with the likes of Oracle, we have a partnership with Microsoft. The ability to have a multi-cloud, on-prem, off-prem, and a diverse cloud capability for the compute is a key enabler for us and for our customers and partners. Connectivity is coming second. We are seeing in the future where, in terms of the artificial AI capability to be deployed at edge devices, for those to happen, you will not have the ability to have such a huge compute capability at the edge. You need a very good, efficient pipeline. That pipeline could be mobile, it could be fixed. So in terms of investment infrastructure, that's key for us. Second, of course, in our assets and what His Excellency spoke about in terms of data, the ability to amalgamate all of our data lakes into one large data ocean and the orchestration between different data in order for it to be useful, deployed into the model. This is extremely important for us. Again, I refer some of the stats that were shared this morning in the speech of His Excellency Gergawi, and I think if you talk about the computation needs for, let's take for instance ChatGPT 1, the first generation, they needed something around 125 million computation parameters to run a single query and to train the model. 2, 10x that to 1.5 billion. 3, 10x that to roughly 175 billion. Come 4, you're talking about 1.7 trillion computation elements needed to run a query. You could only imagine the impact that will have in terms of the infrastructure requirements of operators, technology operators such as EN. Third, so we're talking about the infrastructure, one. Number 2, the assets, which is the data and the people. Our AI graduate program, we have a chief AI officer who's truly orchestrating the strategy for the organization overall and pushing us forward. And then at the 4th layer, it's truly the philosophy. I think we've been, over the past 2 decades, our interaction with technology, and when first AI came, was exposed with a linguistic, with MML capability to the world, the way we interacted with it, thought about it, was similar to the way we deal with the search engines, with Google. We use AI to fetch things for us. We use AI to answer questions. And that's not what it's supposed to do, nor what it was built to do. The way we're thinking about it, we're shifting philosophy within the organization. You see, please take risk on AI, delegate to AI, delegate decision making. And when you say decision making, it could be the next feature of a product, or it could be the next product. So you're talking about faster, more accurate, more efficient, more profitable, less wasteful decision making. So we're truly pushing the envelope when it comes to organization. You say delegate. Please do not be afraid to delegate to AI decisions that you would have delegated in the past. So the 4th pillar is the philosophy, because we need a mind shift when it comes to that, because we're not used to, we need to adapt to know how to truly utilize the full capabilities of AI.
Right. Thanks so much, Masood. I mean, you sound busy. I must say, you sound very, very busy. But Florian, I want to pick up that busyness. As a government official in a really important position, how are you working with the private sector in your country and region? But companies, I can only imagine, are making all this effort, doing so many things. What is the right approach or framework for the public sector working with the private sector?
Collaboration is key. I'm working pretty well together with our telecommunication provider, for example, all over Austria, to provide connectivity all over Austria. We have 95% 5G coverage right now, and that's in in a country where you have very high mountains. I hope some of you have been the opportunity to ski in Austria, for example, so you know it's not the perfect landscape to come to a perfect connectivity. And also we have to collaborate for sure, for example, in the whole cybersecurity sector. We are not able as a government to provide cybersecurity to all our companies by our own. We have to collaborate in that fields with the private sector. But what we can do, we have to provide the perfect legal framework for the private sector. For example, by sandboxes, regulatory sandboxes. That's also a key part of the AI Act, and we will issue our own regulatory sandbox law, as you also have it here in the Emirates, that you give the companies the opportunity to check their solutions in real life. I think that's a very important
and that's
thing.
the sandbox, right?
Yes, sandbox. Yeah.
And that's why it's nicely named the sandbox, because what, companies can experiment, but I imagine they have to report back to you, back to the public sector, to say this is how it's going, right? That's the point of the sandbox.
Yeah, for sure. So you are able to also to come to the law and maybe also change something. That's important.
Right, absolutely. I mean, it's so fascinating, because one question I have is the acceleration in the private sector I see in other parts of the world, including here, right? The acceleration is pretty remarkable. Can regulators keep up? I mean, is that a real challenge of your job, just to keep up with the sort of the pace of change and experimentation in these companies?
It's like it is everywhere else when it comes to regulation. Let's talk about drug regulation, for example, or doping regulation we have in sports. All the time you're lagging a bit behind of also bad guys. And so, for sure, that's a challenge, especially when it comes to an area which is developing so fast like it is in the AI field.
Yeah, absolutely. Masood, can I just pick this point up? All that work you're doing, all that experimentation, and you're actually talking about encouraging your colleagues to take risks, delegate decision-making, take risks. But what are you looking for from the public sector? What's the right regulatory approach that would facilitate your experimentation and your development?
I think in terms, if we reflect on our experience, the public sector in terms from a regulatory environment point of view have been very encouraging, very to be conducive for us to push the envelope. And to be in that sense, this is something that has enabled us to really push forward. And if I can pivot in terms of what we've been busy doing over the past couple of years, we've been enabling the organization from an operating model point of view for a day like this, where the technological movement and the speed of technology transition is mind-blowing. So the past couple of years, we've been busy transitioning what we call EAM from your traditional telco, a regional telco, to a global technology conglomerate. What does that really mean in a sense? What it means is that today, our business lines, and maybe let me give a little bit of background in terms of why is that necessary. One of the reasons that we've seen over the past, I would say, decade, and up until last year, if you look from a total shareholder return, the MSCI index over the past 8 to 9 years, the return has been for the telecom sector, total shareholder return -10, while in other sectors, the full index, including telecom, is around 45% up until last year. If you look at the multiples of traditional telco of 9 to 7 versus if you go into solutions, you're talking to teens, early teens to mid-teens, and if you go into digital or what we call sort of the digital business that are consumer facing, could be much more than that. So what we've done is that over 2 years ago, for the purpose of exposing value, for the purpose of giving focus for the different teams, we delayered the company into 3 to 4 main pillars. Pillar number 1 is telecom. And telecom is about re-gutting the engine, bringing new technology refresh to the core, making sure connectivity is super. Today we're talking about 99% coverage when you 5G coverage, 98% FTTH to the home, the highest in the world for the last 6 years, high speeds when it comes to mobile, All of these metrics is not to brag, those are important metrics to be an enabler. And this is what the core telecom will do in order to truly re-energize and reinvest in the infrastructure, the connectivity infrastructure. And then you're talking about a separate entity for consumer digital, consumer facing. And the realization was that unless you give it the attention, the priority, and the dedication that it needs, what we used to call traditional telecom sector will never be able to compete with the likes, the OTTs. You're talking like the Facebooks and the Ubers of the world and all that. So you needed to give it another ring-fenced entity called E and Life, headed by one of our colleagues here, Khalifa Shamsi. And then another entity that is the solution entity. Again, ring-fenced, focused, team, new blood, new talent that looks at the solution, cloud. That's 3 years ago. So imagine the explosion that we're seeing, and to Jensen's words this morning, we're about to see it as well into the future. We've been busy with cloud for the last 3 years, declaring partnerships with G42 and partnerships with the different providers and building our own on-prem as well. IoT solutions as well as cyber security. So this is the solution entity. And then a venture business that would invest in the parallel adjacent businesses. So what that did, that made us ready for us to serve our partners and customers better. One of the things on the connectivity side, what we're seeing is the need for emergence of what we call private 5G sort of connectivity solutions. Today, we're talking about different verticals. We verticalized this connectivity, where it was one size fits all. Today, you have a private 5G for industry, a private 5G for, let's say, health, a private 5G entity, let's say, for a pharmaceutical, to manufacturing. Today, this would enable our end customers to give them a much lower secure data, sort of ring-fenced data environment, lower latencies, which will enable them to manage the resources much more efficiently. On the consumer side, I could go on and on, but I think I'm conscious of time. I see the clock ticking. On the consumer side, where many things we've digitized our touch base to our customers. I don't want any of our customers today in the UAE to have to leave the comfort of their home. So today, in our app, 6 million downloads, we made sure that most of our services are available there. It is better. It is improving. Is it where I want it to be? No, but we will get there. So today, all of this transition may enable us to become better servant to our partners and customers. And there are many examples, but for the interest of time, I'll try to be...
I would like to underline that. Right now, I'm issuing a spectrum for the private sector that everybody, the fabrics, the infrastructure, whoever would like to do it, is able to issue a private 5G network on their campus, on their road, whatever. I think that's really the future of connectivity for a special use case.
If I can elaborate on that. So, absolutely 100%, I think spectrum is key. And I think this is a dual sort of, we can look at it from an operator point of view. That's sort of the mentality and the philosophy that you'll always face, and this is something that if the spectrum is democratized, that is great for the enablement of 5G use cases, but also it puts a doubt in the operator's mind in terms of how much capital I should deploy. So today, we spoke about our network being the fastest 5G networks in the world. We spoke about the network in terms of FTTH, 98% penetration in the UAE, the fastest globally. We spoke about the mobile, which was the fixed. Today, we wouldn't have the comfort to deploy those billions of dirhams into the infrastructure if we knew that spectrum would be used by an operator X, or operator Z, operator Y, and all that. And I think, to an extent, in Mobile World Congress last year, the discussion was, did Europe overdo it in terms of over-liberalization of the telecom sector? Again, I think those were important discussions that were had last year in terms of the number of operators, 200 to 300 operators within the continent. So I think the intent and the appetite, the word I'm looking for, the appetite to invest billions of capex into the infrastructure to make it state-of-the-art modern will always be undermined if there is a shadow of doubt that some of the spectrum or the elements of it will be given. And I'm portraying sort of the telco's mindset, and that's the way we come about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So listen, in the last few minutes, I just want to turn to some of those economic impacts that I mentioned earlier. And I just want to ask where you are on that spectrum of pessimism versus optimism. Florian, I'll start with you. These technologies are exciting, but we're talking a lot this day, and I'm sure the next 2 days, about some of the challenges as well. But if I had to put you on the spot on a spectrum, the economic impact on, say, jobs or productivity, are you optimistic that these technologies and the sort of supporting regulation is going to work out so we have a positive impact on jobs and productivity? Or are you, at the moment, a little bit more cautious that in the short term there might be a bit of a negative impact on jobs and productivity?
For sure, it will have. Every technical revolution led in the past to more working places, for example, and it will be the same when it comes to AI. You know, Europe was a very wealthy country over the last decades, and the only chance to keep this prosperity also in the future is innovation, is the use of AI. We have a big lack of workforce right now in the European Union, especially when it comes to IT jobs. So there is no way around. We have to focus on innovation, and we have to focus also on artificial intelligence.
Absolutely. I mean, I am encouraged. I like to ask these questions because I'm an economist. I have to ask these questions. But I'm encouraged by what you're doing, and also the collaboration and partnerships between private and public sector. But Masood, where are you on that spectrum, the economic impacts of all these amazing technologies?
Can I answer in the long form? I'll only true because it's a complex problem to describe. I wish it was that simple to say pessimistic, optimistic, and all that. I think just like every new industry, that technological advancement that comes abroad, there's a cycle. So I think we're in the early phase where you're in the job elimination phase. We're in the phase where we're seeing it at the organization today. There are certain tasks that humans are doing, basic, repetitive, that are better off by AI. And by the way, today we're seeing AI replacing AI jobs. We have some bots today that were AI in the past. We're replacing those bots with higher functioning AI capabilities. So it's not just taking the jobs of humans. This will be what we call the job elimination. And in the World Economic Forum report, we were just screening that they're expecting over the next 5 years, 83 million jobs to disappear. That's their expectation, and based on research and sentiment reading from different executives around the world. The IMF thinks 40% of the global workforce is exposed to AI. After that, there'll come what I think is the job transition phase. Companies who are able to truly leverage the force of AI have better products, better spec'd products, faster to the market at a much cheaper production cost, because today using AI capabilities, those companies, while they'll take the jobs and the roles of a lot of functions and roles, but also it will create a lot of jobs. It will create wealth. This is the wealth transition. And I think lastly is the unknown. I think that the third part is what the new horizon is, that where AI will spawn such use cases that it will create new businesses on their own that we've never even thought of, and we never came up about. The same report, World Economic Forum, also believes that 70 million new jobs will be created over the next 5 years. So you think there is, and the examples of history, we're running out of time, but the examples of history are a lot. I remember in 2017, Feb, I was here, and speaking about Uber, Travis was speaking that in the panel, in the plenary, that because what Uber capability has done, today they're seeing less demand between 18-year-old to 25-year-old for purchasing cars. People who newly are obtaining driving license in the US. The reduction of sales of cars. That's economic wealth reduction and shift value to Uber. And he was talking about the difficulties they're facing from regulators, taxi unions around the world, and the problems they were having. Fast forward 7 years down the road, and I was listening to an interview with Dara, their new CEO. Not so new by now. And you will not imagine what his biggest bottleneck was. His biggest bottleneck it wasn't prices. In fact, their prices are going down. Dollars per rate per mile. It wasn't fuel. It wasn't cost. It wasn't any fixed assets, because they don't have any. It was supply of drivers. The ability for them to drive is dependent on how many drivers they can employ on the Uber app. So you can imagine, they might have shifted wealth from another sector, but they're helping creating jobs in another.
Right.
Now, this is a simple example, but there will be many other examples where AI, the use cases of AI, will come up with new businesses that we haven't thought of, and that's why I'm eternally optimistic
You're
of
optimistic,
any
yeah,
technology advantage.
understood.
Eternally optimistic.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you so much, everyone. Please join me in thanking Masood and Florian for talking today. Thanks, guys.